All right, welcome to episode 31 of the At Bat Podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez along with my work colleagues, Gabriel Wilkins, Miles Porter. How are we doing today, guys? How are we doing, Miles?
Hey, doing good. Just enjoying this beautiful, amazing weather we're having here in Chicago. So that's always fun. But yeah, doing good. Same workout routine for baseball. Just getting ready for the season next year, and just enjoying the World Series.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I was definitely been taking out the time to enjoy some nice weather in Chicagoland area. 70 degrees back-to-back days. You really can't complain about that. As well as, watching some World Series action and, White Sox making a big-time splash higher, at the managerial spot for once and for all. Glad to see that they got that resolved with someone who appears to be an excellent communicator and had an impressive interview yesterday at Guaranteed Ray Field.
That's what we're gonna start off with today. The White Sox hire manager Pedro Grifol. He spent I believe it was 12 seasons with the Kansas City Royals, and I mean, to be honest, man, I'll give my two cents real quick before we give it off to Gabe, the White Sox fan here. But you know, I said it myself. I mean, I even had a piece for War saying, to get Joe Espada, but unfortunately didn't work out there. But you know what? When you really break down this hire, I think the White Sox did a great job. In getting a guy that's that was seemed like he was under the radar, but it looks like it looks and sounds like a great baseball mind. He was actually on a podcast. I believe it was last year. With a guy named Alex Hughes. He's a broadcaster, young broadcaster, and I listened to a little bit and kind of like his what went into his game planning. And yeah, man, I mean, all signs look really good for when it comes to Grifol and all that. So, and not to mention too, it's also cool to have a Hispanic manager there, and to there's some fans that are even saying, hey, they'll bring back Abreu is like, because he's Cuban and he would love to play him, with him there, maybe another year or something. But we'll start with you, Gabe. So what were your initial thoughts and what did you think about the overall hire about from above of Pedro Grifol?
Well, my initial thoughts on it is that, I give kudos to the White Sox organization for holding a thorough and expansive managerial search. Rick Hahn talked about it in the press conference for Grifol, how they had between 20 to 30 names, and they eventually wound up interviewing a total of 8 names among those 20 to 30 names expansively. And they said what impressed them the most with Grifol was his communication ability, his ability to, relate to multiple players across the clubhouse. Me personally, I was looking for a manager who was bilingual, a guy who was an excellent communicator, a guy that pays a big attention to detail. As we know, Grifol, he played an expansive role in Kansas City's game planning over
Mm-hmm.
the last several years as a bench coach. Kansas City has had tremendous amount of success against the White Sox. I believe they're 97 and 84 over the last 10 years, in which Grifol was a part of that Royal staff. So that says a lot to me. One thing that impressed me in the press conference that he talked about is making sure that the energy of the ball club is right each and every single day they take to the field. And he was talking about how he noticed when he was a bench coach at Kansas City, how it depended on the day with the White Sox, which team you were going to get. And that's telling when someone that's on the opposite end of the dugout can tell your energy level is not up to
Mm-hmm.
par and when it is. And he said when it is, they're one of the top teams in the American League to beat. I can see that for myself as a fan going to many games, and to see that someone from within the division knows that now having come over here to Chicago, I think that's a positive sign. And it makes me wonder, well, if he knows that much about the White Sox ball club already, what does he know about other ball clubs that the White Sox will be seeking to contend with in an effort to get back atop of the AL Central in 2023, such as the Cleveland Guardians, who are the reigning AL Central champions, the Minnesota Twins, as well as the Kansas City Royals, a team that the White Sox have often struggled with, an up-and-coming Detroit Tigers team. So I'm impressed with the hire a lot. I like that he's put his feet to the fire immediately, got in touch with Eloy Jimenez, a guy who he had the privilege of coaching in winter ball, I believe, in the Dominican Republic about a few years ago before he made his debut when he was like a 20 or 21-year-old rookie. So I'm impressed with the hire on many facets and many levels, and I like his attitude, and I believe that all the work that he's put in to get to this position will be a huge benefit to him as well. And I also believe that the addition of Charlie Montoyo is his bench coach, a guy
Mm-hmm.
who is a former manager of the Blue Jays, had success in Toronto, had them above 500. In spite of him getting fired this season, he has recent managerial experience. We know what he did in Tampa Bay as a bench coach. I think that he'll be a huge help to Grifol in this process and getting transitioned into being in that lead seat and going forward.
Yeah, what'd you think, Miles, about the overall hire then?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, I think Gabe has made some incredible points in terms of just a coach a manager who's communicating is so important, and just based off of kind of what I've learned, and I'm still learning things about this guy as well, but I'm hearing
Mm-hmm.
nothing but amazing things. To be someone who's very observant in baseball, that takes you such a long way. And so for this manager already to have certain knowledge on these players, to kind of see tendencies, kind of understand the personality of how this team was working this year, and already coming up with a game plan on how to improve that and how to prevent certain things and try to help the mentality and the moral of this entire ball club. I think it's incredible. It kind of goes back to what I was saying this entire season, where the White Sox, on days they look very defeated, on days they look very confident. Um, and I'm going to keep saying that this is a very talented ball club. And the mental part of baseball is one of the hardest things in the world. Certain days you do feel great, certain days you don't feel great, but you kind of got to find that common ground as much as you can in order to find success. And I think, from what I'm hearing about this new manager, he's going to be so beneficial to all of that. So I'm on board with it. I'm super happy for the White Sox, and I'm hoping to see some good baseball from them next year.
Yeah, no, and the thing is too is the way that, and Gabe said it too with the game planning, that it's becoming a way more important thing in that type of strategy. And a lot goes into it, but like he kind of played it down. I know when I was listening to that podcast where he was being interviewed last year, and when they talked about game planning, but he kind of played it down and saying, it's just a part of the game, and they it's just something that they've just planned for the whole game and just kind of strategized for it and from before. But I think it's pretty important because with the way the game is nowadays with the bullpen and the starters, it's to know when a guy's coming in and stuff like that, and have everything arranged the way it should be. I think it says something about organization, and I think it says something about how prepared a guy is. Obviously, things don't always go to plan, and things, especially in baseball, it's so unpredictable. So, but you still want a guy like that that is gonna try to prepare for every situation that happens, and it seems like what he has done, and also the fact that he embraces analytics. So, like, we all
Yeah,
know, and we've had conversations here as well, that at the end of the day, analytics can only take you so far, but to have a good mixture of analytics and just overall game planning and without the numbers, is a great thing to have. And also, what I was thinking was that for the White Sox, and I know Gabe, you can attest to this more, is they have never really been analytically driven, or at least to this extent. And yeah, I wanted to see what you thought about that, because I thought it's super important to have a guy like that right now in this day and age. And to be a smart guy, and to be, like I said, like overly prepared, and also just into the numbers. What did you think about that when he talked about the analytics game and all that stuff? Because I know plenty, and the thing is, just like the organization, there's plenty of fans out there that, plenty, especially White Sox fans, because I know a couple too that aren't really all, sold in general to analytics, and we always, have these, arguments about what numbers are important and what not. But I think it's important to have a guy like Pedro Grifol.
Absolutely. And I had
Mhm,
the pleasure of listening to that interview that he did when he
mhm,
was a member of the Royal staff back
mhm,
in 2021, talking about game planning. And what I got from it is that he's a guy who was seeking to mix analytics with instinctual baseball knowledge. You know, he seems like an old school guy, but he's also open. And being
mhm,
open minded in this day and age is very important. You know, we're talking about a White Sox team that was, you know, on paper projected to hit way more home runs than what they finished with. They failed to reach that expectation. And while, you know, stats like exit velocity don't tell you everything, you know, Rick Hahn has even said it himself many times. And it's a saying that a lot of us as White Sox fans have said as well. And it's been a true testament to this team being successful or either middle of the pack like they were this year. And that's ball go far, team go far.
mhm,
And you have to have guys that are analytically, you know, savvy, if you will, in order to be successful in some capacity in this game of baseball nowadays. But he's also a guy who knows how to mix in some old school strategy with it. He doesn't strike me as being a fully analytical guy. And one thing
mhm,
that he said in that podcast that really stuck out to me the most was when he was talking about just the 162 game grind.
mhm,
You can't win a pennant in April and May, he said, but you can sure as hell lose
mhm,
it. And that stuck out to me. And this was a team that got off to a hot start through the first 10 to 12 games. But once they went into Cleveland in the middle of April and went on like a 6 to 8 game losing skid, they were never able to get back right after that, no matter how many times they tried. And I think he's going to stress the importance of getting off to a good start and be the type of guy that even if they don't, make sure that the mindset is vital and important and that guys in the locker room are keeping the vibes at an all-time high, which is what is needed. Because I think that energy was missing from this group. And a lot of times that comes from the leader. And no disrespect to Tony La Russa, he was never able to really get a full stranglehold on these guys, I believe, in my opinion. Pedro is having the ability has been granted the ability rather to get his own staff and work with Rick Hahn hand in hand, who's into analytics in regards to building his coaching staff. And I believe he'll also be doing the same to make improvements and upgrades to the current roster.
Yeah, no, that's true, and the fact that he said that, yeah, like that you could lose a you know a pennant in April and May. That is true, and the thing is too is, uh, you know, plenty of seasons have started like that. Let me look, for example, perfect example, the Yankees this year, right? Is
Yep.
that they went on kind of like a little bit of a downward spiral in August, but if it wasn't for that, you know, amazing start, where
Mm-hmm.
they were like 70-20, I'm just exaggerating, but that's how much like it was just they were, you know, going off at the beginning of the season. You know, they you know they might have not made it to the playoffs if they didn't have that great start. Who knows, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you know, to get off on a good start is definitely one of the most important things, and one of the most like underappreciated things. I feel like people don't talk about that enough, and I think it's super important. Just because, you know, especially in April, you know, it's because look, at the end of the day, people always say, "Oh, you know, it's an April game, it's a May game, who cares?" But ultimately, the games matter. Like they just
Yeah.
do. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It's early. You can't get too excited. You can't get, too over the top or too down. But at the same time, that game in May, it might cost you, in September. So,
Mm-hmm.
it just is what it is. So I think it's important to value, the beginning of the season. But yeah, no, I definitely like this hire. It's out of the box, but and I was telling some Sox fans too, and because a lot of them were like, "Who is this guy?" Like, why couldn't they get like Ozzy or something? But look, it's out of the box, and I think that maybe that's what those Sox needed.
And you
They
know
needed
what?
some, yeah.
And not to cut you off, but
Oh,
this is the thing that really stuck out to me the most. He is the first manager, I believe, since Jerry Manuel in 1998 to be hired from outside of the organization. Pedro Grifol has
Yeah.
no ties, no previous White Sox ties, even though he had a relationship with Chris Getz in
Hmm.
Kansas City, who worked, with inside their front office for a while before coming here, as well as played for the Royals after leaving here. He
Hmm.
has some, connections with Chris Getz, as well as I believe the scouting director Mike Shirley and him played minor league baseball together with the Twins. Like he has previous relationships from other places, but he has no direct White Sox ties, from previous past. I think that's a big deal.
Hmm.
This was a fan base that wanted an outsider, that wanted a new voice.
Yeah.
He provides you that. And oh, by the way, he was also within your division. So he's seen a lot of you, good and bad. So I like the hire. I kept hearing his name a lot. Didn't know much about him, but as I continue
Hmm.
to read more and more on him, and especially seeing the way he spoke in the press conference,
Hmm.
about sacrifices and what it took to get to this point. He's saying all the right things. Now it's time to put the work in.
Yeah, no, and that is true though. The fact that they've a lot of fans, they were like, just as long as it has no ties with the White Sox.
Thank you.
And yeah, it's just been a little bit over. It's just been too much in coming like that for the Sox, and a little bit like too many comfortable hires. And I think
Mm-hmm.
this is one that's kind of not it sounds kind of like insulting, but like it is an uncomfortable hire because it's different. You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
um so I think it'll all turn out well for the Sox, overall with this guy. He looks like he's ready to go, and yeah, as you said, it's important to have a guy that knows the division. So uh yeah, hopefully it all works out and Sox are ready to go. We'll shift over to the Cubs now. Nothing much. Really just wanted to talk a little bit the Gold Glove situation. So Ian Happ wins his first career Gold Glove. And you know what? Going into it, Miles is going to ask you a little bit about the Gold Glove situation. So honestly, watching the season, Ian Happ did make some great plays, over the course of the season, but a Gold Glove didn't necessarily pop out to me I wasn't really thinking about that, when throughout the season in general. But kind of, what did you think about Ian Happ defensively over the course of the season? And honestly, what's your opinion on Gold Gloves in general? Because I was, talking to Gabe before I came on, and I think look, the award's cool, and it is, to have a Gold Glove, and when you talk about guys like Arenado, like there's no doubt about it that he deserves, the last like 10 Gold Gloves. But I think that a lot of the Gold Gloves, or a lot of the times the Gold Gloves just go off like fielding percentage, which is very one dimensional. So um, kind of, yeah, wanted to get your take on Ian Happ and just Gold Gloves overall, man. What'd you think?
Yeah, it's definitely a prestigious award. I think any sort of award at this level is very it's very very important. Um, but I think you made a good point there. And before I get into it, I'll say that with Ian Happ, I think he took a lot of steps forward in many different aspects of his game this year. I think he's always been very defensive, very solid defensively. No matter where the Cubs have put him, and we've seen him all over the place. We've seen him at first, at second, and now he's pretty much left field is pretty much his position. We saw him in center a little bit as well. So
Mhm.
to kind of see him just settle into left and be as solid as he has, I think it's great. Now, I think it's any different than how he's played left field in the past? No, I don't. But I do believe that he did make a lot of great defensive plays this year. Um, the Gold Glove is an interesting award. I think for the most part, a lot of it does go off of fielding percentage. But so many of these guys may not have that many moments defensively during the year. But if there's someone who has like two or three that saved the game or saved the wild card or saved the World Series win, my whole thing is I hope that a lot of these players are acknowledged just as much.
Mhm.
Just because I know that for some guys, there really is a small sample size. There is. But I'd be okay with it a little bit more if some of these players were acknowledged just a little bit more. The
Mhm.
unfortunate thing is certain players aren't getting the ball hit to them that much. That's just the reality of baseball sometimes is you, depending on who your pitching staff is, depending on the weather or whatever the case may be, certain players aren't getting that many opportunities to make crazy plays or getting that many outfield assists or whatever the case may be. There's so much that plays into it. I think if there's a wider spectrum, maybe that some of these committees can look at, that'd be more helpful as well. Because as I'm looking at all these Gold Glove winners, every single one of them is very deserving. But I also would like to see some honorable mentions as well.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think that's what another thing I was gonna say was the fact that Nico Horner was not even nominated, and he was just one of the best
He was a
defensive
wizard.
shortstops. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was second in the National League in total runs saved, which is one of the most important infield defensive stats. And Miguel Rojas deserved to win it, no doubt about it. I think he was that good this year. But just the fact that there's no nomination. But I was telling Gabe too is the fact that Dylan Cease was not nominated for Gold Glove for starting for pitchers, and a lot of the White Sox fans online I saw were just outraged. The fact that he didn't get a nomination or even win for that matter. But Gabe, what did you think? I wanted to get
Dylan,
your take
stop
on. Oh,
disrespecting
go
Dylan Cease. I'm tired of this, man.
ahead.
Yeah,
Like,
Dude,
come
it,
on. Go ahead, Gabe. Sorry.
I get it. I get it, but I mean, if I give you another name who I felt could have been considered for Gold
Mhm.
Glove, if you're looking at it from a pitching standpoint on the White Sox, it's Johnny Cueto.
Uh-huh.
Like he's a wizard. Like his awareness and his ability to make plays and the way he feels the position, you can tell he's played other positions in baseball prior to becoming a pitcher. And I know he has. I
Mhm.
forget which ones to be exact, but I know he did come up as a prospect in other areas prior to pitching. So like he's a guy that stood out to me, even though he's a veteran and he's been here and done it before. I don't even believe he's won a Gold Glove, but he's always been an impressive fielder just throughout the course of his career, not even just with the White Sox. But pitching is kind of tough when it comes to Gold Gloves. And Mal's brought up an excellent point in regards to how, a lot of this, one of the main key factors is how often is the ball being hit to you.
Mhm.
And in a day and age where you have so many shifts, defensively, that could impact the amount of baseballs that you see coming your way as a defensive player as well. And when you bring up the point on Nico Horner, yeah, that does kind of, shock me. How are you second in defensive run saved, but not nominated? You
Mhm.
should at least be nominated. But
Mhm.
I'm more the only main gripe that I have with Dylan is how wasn't he an all-star? The Gold
Mhm.
Glove, discussion that could go either way, but you know, I do think Gold Gloves are important, and I think Gold Gloves should garner way more appreciation from fans because defense does help win championships, and in an era where we're so concerned with big time numbers like OPS and slugging percentage and all of that, defense wins titles. And the one
Mhm.
thing that did impress me the most when I look at these Gold Gloves, Cleveland had 3 Gold Glove winners. Andres Jimenez is second base, Mal Straw is center, and Stephen Kwan, I believe, in left field. So, like, you have all these guys who won Gold Gloves, didn't score a lot of runs, the Guardians didn't,
Mhm.
but they proved that defense can win you a division. And that's exactly why one of the teams that we previously discussed in the White Sox are seeking to try and make upgrades to their corner positions within the outfield because they're very important. So, I mean, overall, I can't say that I have a major gripe, but I could see some of it because Dylan Cease, yeah, he's a pretty good fielder for the most part, but that's always tricky with pitchers.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I will say this is that yeah, 100% agree. The award does matter. I just think ultimately uh the way they decide who wins it, I think might need to be not overhauled, but I think looked at differently and kind of I guess looked at through different numbers. But yeah, no, I think that does make Cueto does make a good case, and he has been a solid defender all of his career. So yeah, no, it definitely could go either way, and I completely agree with you with the whole Dylan Cease and the All-Star game. But it was one of those things that we talked about. Me and Miles talked about at the time is the fact that what stopped it from being an all-star was the whole every team needs an all-star.
Yeah,
And yeah, and that every year that that situation always comes up with somebody, and it causes people to talk about whether that's that should be a thing. But I think that's for another day. But because that's like I don't know. That's ultimately such a big thing that baseball only does, and it's an exhibition. So I don't know. We'll see. And I will say this too. is that because I was talking to some Sox fans recently about this, and it's like Paul Blackburn may never be an All-Star again. No, no offense to Paul Blackburn. I don't know, right? I'm just talking. But Dylan Cease looks like he's an elite talent that could be an All-Star 5 more times. So that's that could that would maybe put you at ease a little bit, Gabe.
But what I didn't get though, and I know every team has to have an all-star for the
Mm-hmm.
all-star game. Now that we're talking about it, if I'm not mistaken, Garrett Cole pitched on the final day of the first half of the season. And typically
Mm-hmm.
when that happens, you have a replacement. And even though Garrett Cole was an all-star, he wasn't allowed to pitch, but he did show up in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Like he couldn't even got a uniform. I mean, I didn't understand that. That to me, that was one of the biggest snubs I've seen in the last 20 years of watching baseball. I just didn't get. I just knew he would get in at least as like an injury replacement for
Mm-hmm.
someone, But
Yeah, no.
that'll be one of the greatest stories to talk about the next 10 to 15 years. Like they really shafted him out of an all-star appearance this year for sure.
Yeah, no, and that's what we've talked about it before, just like the All-Star game and just all that stuff. It's so complicated and it could go so many different
Yeah.
ways. So yeah,
Pisses me off, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Pisses me off. Freddie Freeman was like he almost like they
Yo, he almost
almost
didn't make it.
forgot. They're like, oh yeah, Freddie Freeman's really good. Get him in there. Yeah, we knew. Yeah, it was, of course. Like that's what it felt like. Don't get me started in the All-Star game.
And that's the only reason Ty France and Freddie Freeman made the All-Star game was because of us, Miles. Remember? Because we were talking about it, making a big deal.
I need my credit. That's all I'm saying.
For real. All right, man. So now we're shift over to, of course, the biggest story in baseball, which is the World Series. So right now, the Houston Astros and the Philadelphia Phillies, they played 5 games, and the Astros have won 3 out of the first 5 games. It's been an absolutely insane series, and just as we expected. I think everyone really talked about last week of it being a long series, whether 6, 7 games, whatever, and it's been way more than I expected to. Just awesome. Just in every way, scoring, pitching. It's got everything, no hitters, and all that. But initial thoughts. We'll start with you, Miles. Just straight up, like, and we'll break down each game and we'll look at each decision that has been made so far. But what is your initial thoughts right now as the Astros stand 1 game away from winning their second World Series since 2017?
I mean, wow, there's so much to take away from this entire series. I'm loving the fight that the Phillies are showing. The Phillies have not just folded to this team. They're battling. They're putting up runs. They're pitching well in most cases. And the Astros are just showing their maturity and how solid they are and the timely hitting and like you said, we're going to get into the different games and the specific player stats, but this has been a very entertaining World Series, and it just makes me proud of the MLB, and it makes me very proud of these two teams to compete the way they're competing and also put on a great show, because this right here is huge for baseball. You know how happy I was to see Meek Mill rap at the game of the day? That was amazing. And it's just the city of Philadelphia. This is great for them, and this story between these two teams. And people are against the Astros. They don't want to see them win for reasons that we don't need to get into, and they want to see Bryce Harper get a World Series. And Philly fans showing their passion. I think the story of this World Series alone is just amazing. And then for the actual games themselves to be as incredible as that they've been, I couldn't be more satisfied. I could not be more proud of either one of these teams, regardless of the outcome. I just think it's been great for baseball, and I've been super entertained for various reasons.
To add to Miles' point, man, it's been an incredible World Series. I talked with you guys prior to the series, and I was talking about how important defense would be and how it would play a vital role in who came up with the trophy, Cup Series end or not. And it's been so many great defensive plays that have been made. Think about the hit that Jeremy Pena had at the bottom of the 9th in Game 1 that Nick Castellanos robbed after Philadelphia came back from down 5-0. And as soon as he got that highway robbery out in right field, you had JT Realmuto step up and hit a home run. That was the difference in the ball game. Like last night, game 5 of the World Series, Chas McCormick, making that big time play out in center field. If he doesn't make that play, you're talking about a double, if not triple.
Hmm.
Depending on how bad the fall is, and he doesn't come down with that baseball. So it's been some big time plays. Trey Mancini as
Yeah.
well.
Hmm.
Making that big first base when Schwarber hit that line drive. To save some runs off the board. I've been impressed with the defense on both sides, and I've been impressed with pitching as well. What Verlander did, he wasn't even on. He didn't even have his best stuff, but
Hmm.
he found a way, nevertheless, to make that slider just effective enough to get Reese Hoskins out with a bases loaded jam in the bottom of the second. He also got Castellanos on a flyout, and the closer game at the bottom of the fifth for his final inning of work on the 10 pitch at bat. So I just been impressed with the defensive play and the pitching, as well as the young stars, guys that I wasn't really familiar with to start the year, but I know I'm gonna have my eyes on going forward, such as Jeremy Payne. It's like the bigger the moment, the bigger the stage, the bigger his game gets. He doesn't play like a rookie. At least he hasn't throughout October from
Hmm.
coming up with timely hits in the LDS round, the LCS round. And you saw it, in game 5 of the World Series to break that tie, getting that home run. So as well as, the base hit to start the game to help Houston draw first blood. So I've just been impressed with both sides. And even though Houston's up 3-2, and 31 out of the last 47 teams to have a 3-2 lead to win, you can't count Philadelphia out, man.
Hmm.
Like Miles said, these guys battle. And even though they're going behind enemy lines in Houston with Framber Valdez taking them out in game 6, all it takes is for those bats to wake up offensively and doing something that they didn't do in game 5, which is executing with runners in scoring position.
Hmm.
I think that's what cost them the game last night. They had their chances.
Yeah, you're right. And defense has been such a big deal that, you know, so many plays to save games or whether, to prevent. And yeah, that Mancini one, man, that one goes on the line at 2 runs.
Yeah.
So they had so many things. And also just the fact that we're talking about defense in a World Series with the Phillies, let alone the Phillies being in there. But the Phillies, their defense was absolutely horrendous
Exactly.
throughout the season, it was pretty bad in some spots, especially at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I even had a friend that literally would just watch because he knew there was going to be a debacle in the ninth inning. Like he's like, I can't wait to watch Phillies baseball in the ninth inning because something's gonna go wrong.
It typically
Um,
does.
yeah. So to show how much they've improved and to the clutch defense, especially Castellanos, who I mean, he's arguably one of the worst defensive, outfielders in the game. And credit to him, man. He's gone out there and even he said though, like that focus has a lot to do with it, and the fact that like in a regular season game, I forget exactly what he said, but he was kind of like he kind of alluded to the fact that in a regular season game, it's easy to not be focused. Yeah, in every pitch, every pitch. So like in postseason baseball, he's stuck on everything that's going on. So it's a little easier to be focused, which, you know what, credit to him is like, if you want anyone to be 100% focused on anything, it should be the, playoffs. Come playoff time, you don't want it to be the opposite. So it's important. So we'll go down the line. Game 1, obviously a classic. The Astros came out to a 5-0 lead, and then the Phillies were able to come back, storm back, to tie the game at 5. And then in extra innings, Realmuto got a solo home run to give the Phillies the lead and ultimately the win. Then in game 2, the Astros were able to win 5-2 behind Framber Valdez, who just did his thing because he's the quality start king. And it was obviously better than a quality start that day. But then the Phillies came back, able to shut out the Astros 7-0. They hit 5 home runs off Lance McCullers, and then in game number 4, the Astros were able to no hit the Phillies in the game that Christian Javier started, and it was a group effort. For the pitching staff for the Astros to no hit. It was just the second no hitter in World Series history, and the first as a team. And then, of course, in game number 5, the Astros were able to edge the Phillies 3-2. Justin Verlander gets his first career World Series win, and I know I saw videos of him hugging, Dusty Baker, and then how much that win means to him. So, with just how his stats have been in the World Series, it hasn't been pretty. So, he was able to hold his own, and I'm not surprised. So, we'll start with game number one. What did you guys think about game number one and the fact that the Phillies were just doing their thing, man, where they going down early and then coming back, and then of course Realmuto ended up winning. We'll start with you, Gabe. What did you think about the game one?
And they set the tone, and,
Mhm.
and they showed you that they weren't going to go down without a fight in that game. And I truly believe that if the Phillies did not win that game, that this would be a post-mortem episode
Mhm.
where we would be congratulating the Houston Astros for capturing the World Series championship, because there were so many plays in that game that helps to define where we are currently in the series. Like I said, with Nick Castellanos making that play, man, like that would have been a backbreaker. To come back from 5 runs down and lose in that tough of a fashion with the way that crowd was into it. I just was impressed all the way around, man. Schwarber having big time hits, Castellanos with the glove, Real Muto hitting the home run to lead off the top of the tank, and then to be able to have Robertson come in and close it down with runners in scoring position when the Astros had their chances. I mean, that was a huge win. I thought after that game that the Phillies were in the catbird seat pretty
Mhm.
much, because they did what they had to do, which was get at least one game in Houston.
Yeah, what do you think, Miles?
Yeah, I mean, they're the you start off the World Series with a lot of people doubting you, and this is the team that came in there. It was like, hey, we're not just gonna take this from you guys. We heard about what you did to the Yankees the series before, but frankly, we don't care. So take this out for game one. I think it was incredible timely hitting, especially by Real Muto. Going back to what Gabe said, driving in 3 runs, and then Harper having 2 hits, and then defensive plays being made. This is a great baseball game overall by both sides. And really just came down to who's going to outlast the other person, who's going to make that blow, and Realmuto really just setting the tone of that last inning, saying, "Hey, you know what? Let's go home." And also a very entertaining last inning as well with Robertson, where they kind of almost lost it there as well. They almost blew it as well. Yeah, great game all around, and hitting on both sides, and a lot of pitching on both sides. So is that was an entertaining way to kind of set the tone for the series, because that really let the Astros know, hey, you know what? You are not gonna do what you think you're gonna do as easy as you're planning on doing it. And so
Mhm.
that's where that respect came in for the Phillies, and you can tell by how the Astros are playing during the rest of the series. They're like, oh, okay, this isn't. We're not gonna steamroll this team. We gotta play ball. So that's what I loved about Game One. Like Gabe said, it set the tone.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think also just the fact that game could have easily been the Kyle Tucker game, 2 home runs, you know, to, give them a 5-0 lead, and he had 4 RBI, and could have gone either way. But yeah, just an awesome game, really set the tone. In game number two, it was, all about Framber Valdez, man. Like I said, he's the quality start king. He went in there 6 innings, 9 Ks, allowing just 1 earned run. Yeah, what do you think about that one, Miles? And you know what? I think Framber Valdez is going to be, if the Astros are able to win in Game 6 and close things out. I think Framber Valdez is going to be if he comes out and gets gives another great start. He has a very good opportunity to be the World Series MVP, because I think he's the one that kind of was able to bring back the Astros, kind of wake them up a little bit in Game 2. And then if he's able to do this, I mean, hell, he gave them 2 wins. So I think that he's underappreciated, just because, like, let's be real, like, he's not the sexiest pitcher when it comes to, he's not like a Justin Verlander, he's not a Zach Wheeler, but look, at the end of the day, he gets things done, and he gets you the win, and that's all that really matters. So yeah, what do you think, Miles? Start with you, in just overall game two, and just about this and how he's been.
Yeah, that's a great response game from the Astros. Kind of like what I said about the game before, it kind of sets the tone. Framber Valdez, this is an amazing start, and overall that pitching staff did great against them, keeping the Phillies at 0-7 with runners in scoring position.
Mhm.
Um, it just says a lot about about his delivery, and I kind of like that. I'm really here for like these interesting windups and like kind of these herky
Mhm.
jerky deliveries, because when I watch a game from a player standpoint, for me, when I look at a pitcher like Aaron Nola, he didn't pitch this game, but he's just an example that comes to my brain. He has a very, very timable windup. And so I think a lot of the deception that goes into, pitchers like Framber Valdez and other players who I want to name as well plays a huge part. So I think just in general, um, keeping the ball out of the air, keeping the hitters off balance. That's one of those things that not only the Astros do very well, but he's the perfect example of a pitcher that has done that and done it very well against the Phillies. So that's what I took away from his performance against a very, very hot Phillies lineup.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I always call Johnny Cueto Mr. Consistent for the White Sox. That's pretty much what Framber Valdez has been for the Houston Astros. This guy is always giving you a quality start. He's always giving you 6 innings plus. He's always keeping the walks to a minimum. He's not going to walk any more than maybe 4 to 3 guys every start. And like me and you were talking about in the midst of this series, Saul, he always finds a way to get out of jams. And that's one of the most important things that you can do, especially in October. You talked about how they had 7 men left on base and they, under Valdez's watch, but not one scored. So,
Mhm.
that goes to show you right there that he's doing what he's been doing all season long and that he is as good as advertised. And I had the pleasure of watching this Houston team come through here in August and seeing Framber Valdez in action do the same thing to the White Sox. And I agree with you, Saul. If he puts together another grand quality outing in game 6 and Houston is in the lead in the bottom at the top of the ninth with a chance to win and they close it out, yeah, you definitely have to consider him as the World Series MVP. And he's a guy, in my opinion, everybody talks about Dylan Cease, and rightfully so, as
Mhm.
being one of the top guys in the AL Cy Young race, even though I think we all know that Justin Verlander is the consensus favorite and will likely get it. But Framber
Mhm.
Valdez has just as much of a legitimate argument as those two guys, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because he's been the definition of an ace for that staff. He just doesn't get all the credit, but the people in Houston know it. And I know a lot of media figures within Houston, and they praise him a great deal, and rightfully so, as he showed why in game 2.
Yeah, 100%. And they know, people in Houston, they for sure know. I just wish he was talked about more around the league just because of how good he is and just the fact that like also I looked at his contract too, and I think he's like only making like 500K, and like not saying 500K is, nothing, but compared to the rest of the league, that's crazy. If he continues that, he's gonna get a major payday and it's gonna, skyrocket. But the series is tied at 1 apiece after game 2. Then in game number 3, obviously was postponed. They moved it, and then the Phillies able to come out with a 7-0 win. Now, this one was a key game, and I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you why. And this one kind of sparked a little bit of a conversation as well that I think always comes up when it comes to Dusty Baker. But Lance McCullers gave up 5 home runs in this game. Now, it what's always talked about with Dusty is his handling of the pitching staff, right? And in game 1, you could have said the same thing with leaving Verlander a little bit too, leaving him in too long. I understand he's your ace. Maybe that's I guess I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. But when it comes to Lance McCullers, giving up 3 home runs is one thing, but giving up 5 home runs, it's crazy, especially the World Series. But wanted to get your opinion. We'll start with you, Gabe. Like I said, Phillies were able to win this one 7-0, and I'm not saying, hey, if it was 3-0, that Phillies wouldn't have won or anything like that, but it would have given them, the Astros a little bit of a better chance. So yeah, what did you think about Dusty's decisions there? and just the overall game?
Well, I was critical of it, as you know, Saul. Talking
Mhm.
with you and our channels and so forth, because with the extra day of rest, I kind of couldn't help but ask myself, why wouldn't you go with Justin Verlander, or why wouldn't you bump Christian Javier up? Because you could pick and choose your spots, if you will. And when you're the road team, which Houston was in this case, as the series shifted to Philadelphia, you kind of got to be aggressive with how you mix and manage pieces. And McCullers was a guy who, as we know, was coming off of surgery with his arm and so forth, and had to take some time to get right, and didn't really come back into the middle of the season for this Astros squad. So I kind of had a lot of questions with that. But Philly's bats just showed up, man. And you could tell that was a city who hadn't seen a World Series game in 13 years. And they fueled off of it. They got him early and often. And it led to runs. And before you knew it, Houston was in trouble. And they had a problem, as they say, at the Johnson Space Center. So I I I have questions about Dusty Baker's managing of pitchers, but as you would get into, I think as the series went along, kind of redeemed himself.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, the Phillies are jumping all over the mistakes, and to add to Gabe's point, we're out here tipping pitches, bro.
Yeah,
Like, it. It's one thing to locate bad, and not pitch well to a team that's hot offensively, but to be tipping your pitches. Of course you give up 5 home runs. Of course you got hit as hard as you did.
Mhm.
And sometimes for certain pitchers, they don't realize that they're doing it because they're thinking about the grip in their hand. They're thinking about this. A lot of pitchers don't recognize that they're doing it because they're not thinking about it. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think anyone really talked to him about it, and they didn't make any adjustments. Therefore, he kept on getting shelled. And you have that on top of the fan base that was just craving a World Series win, and just the presence in Philly. Yeah, yeah, the outcome that happened, we were not surprised by it. And hopefully McCullers is able to learn from that start a little bit and kind of take that and go forward, and not, and make adjustments, because that was just it was almost a home run derby, and it was very entertaining to watch offensively from the Philly standpoint. But unfortunately for the Astros, it was very, very demoralizing. But that's just baseball, man. That's just baseball. So it's those little things that we notice as players and fans can make the biggest difference. And I think that was one of the big difference makers during that game. Aside from the Philly faithful absolutely firing up their team, had me fired up just by watching it. So yeah, that's what I think when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think that dude, the crowd in Philly is just electric. It's just insane. Like, and I think it would be like that even if they played in the playoffs every year. Like, it's just the way they are. It's just Philadelphia, and it's cool also to see like the celebrities like Miles Teller, and the hell, even like they had you know Philly legends throwing out the first pitch
yeah.
yesterday, and it was like Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, they had Charlie Manuel out there. It was pretty cool to see that, and yeah. But what I was gonna say too is that, yeah, you're right with the whole tipping pitches. That was another thing everyone was talking about with Lance McCullers. And yeah, that's another thing too, is that, and we'll talk about the what Dusty did, to go on. But at this point, yeah, we were like, I was just confused. I was like, man, if he really is tipping his pitches, and I think he kind of downplayed it too when they asked him in after the game about whether he was tipping pitches and stuff. And then, like, there was a whole thing with, like, a lot of people were talking about, oh, Bryce Harper knew that he was tipping pitches, and he was telling players like, hey, this and that. And I know they asked Alec Boehm after the game, like, they were like, oh, what did Bryce say to you, during this and that, and then he was just like, oh, nothing, like nothing. Like, also, what do you expect, like, him to say? Oh yeah, he was telling me that. Lance
Right.
McCullers, or was doing this and that. That's why I'm going to hit a bomb
What
out.
he
You know what I mean?
said
So it's like,
was like, no, he's not gonna.
yeah, nice try though.
That's
Yeah,
clubhouse business. And
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
Miles said, when the guy's tipping pitches, and I know Miles has played the game, and even I myself have played on a smaller level. You know what to expect if you know what's coming. I mean,
Mhm.
it's easy going up to the plate, pretty much. It's take your pick when you see it. Make sure
Mhm.
the hunt it down and attack it, put a good swing on it, and do damage with it, and that's what they did.
Yeah, 100%. And also got to give credit to Ranger Suarez, man. I mean, 5 innings, the kid going in there, striking out four and just giving up 3 hits. So that's somebody who I think is going to play a key part in these last 2 games, whether it be out of the bullpen or making a start. So um, yeah, it's a good confidence boost for him. Then going into game number 4, uh, of course, the story was Astros, got the team no hitter. And it's just the second no hitter in World Series history. And, we'll start with you, Miles. What did you think about this overall performance from the Astros pitching staff? And then also, what did you think about Aaron? What have you thought about Aaron Nola? Because I was going to say that I was going to mention him after game one. After game, after game two, was that when it was tied 1-1, I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, if Aaron Nola is not Aaron Nola, then the Phillies are going to have a tough time winning this series. And I think as it stands right now, 3-2 Astros. I think despite Wheeler being as good as he is, I think the X factor as we've gotten later on in the series, I think I pushed it to Aaron Nola. But in this series, this game, he took the loss in that 5-0 win for the Astros. What did you think about the no hitter, and just what did you think about that game overall?
oh my gosh, to start with the Astros in terms of pitching. Dude, Christian Javier is like a cheat code, man. He reminds me of
Yeah.
the kind of player that I've made on MLB The Show to just dominate and never give up any runs. He was lights out along with the rest of that pitching staff. Um, Rafael Montero, that's another key arm out of the pen this year who has
Hmm.
also been lights out and is just completely blowing it by hitters.
Hmm.
Really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that in terms of pitching wise and getting hitters out, they were doing their job and they were consistently doing. That's like, and what's even more crazy is that they used 3 pitchers that game. They used 3. They didn't
Hmm.
use a lot of pitchers. But we've seen this from this ball club. We saw it when they went to extra innings with the Mariners. They know how to pitch. They know how to develop very good pitchers. It is just something. It's like I'm amazed by it, but I'm not surprised. Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. This is something I kind of almost expected. Um, when it comes to Aaron Nola, from one thing that I'm noticing as a player is just that he's not going to blow you away, but he does know how to locate extremely well. He's always
Hmm.
been very good at knowing how to locate his pitches. Now, with that being said, he also has a windup where, as a hitter, it's very, very timable. It's very foot up, foot down, bat to the zone, pow. And I think that has always been one of my critiques about not only Aaron Nola, but other pitchers in the MLB that if you give hitters like rhythm and timing, I mean, best of luck to you. I hope you have stuff that's gonna blow them away or keep them off balance. But he didn't do any of that. Hitters weren't off balance. Hitters were timing him up very well, and on top of his opponent getting no hit, you know, best of luck to you. I mean, his teammates getting no hit. Best of luck to you. So, that was one of those games where it was really just the Astros took care of business on both sides, and the Phillies were just outplayed.
Yeah, yeah. And who would have ever thought that an international free agent that was signed for $10,000, would play this big of a part in the Houston Astros rotation? I talked with Saul about it prior to game 4, and I was saying in order for Houston to really put themselves back in this series, how important game 4 was going to be. And that I expected for Christian Javier to go at least 6 innings and to give up at least 2 earned runs or less. I felt like he had to do that in order to give the Astros a chance. He went 6 innings and he pitched no-hit baseball. And he kind of got his justice for, the way he performed early in the year against New York.
Mm-hmm.
He's proven that he can silence offenses by doing what's necessary to get the out by any means. Bregman came through with timely hits. But from a Phillies perspective, I think that this was a very rough loss because you go from having the bats out in game 3, putting up a 7 spot, to now you get no hit in your own ballpark where you were 6-0 throughout the entire playoffs. It's one thing to lose in a close game, but when you lose like that, that takes a while. I don't care if it's April or May, June, July, October. That's a rough loss to experience, and I really think that that's what shifted the momentum of this series in a great degree to Houston.
Yeah, 100%. And think about it. Astros win Game 6. Astros, win the World Series in general. We're gonna look at that. We're gonna look at this as a swing game. We're gonna look at this as the game that changed the series, and I think that kind of, that 7-0 loss for the Astros might have been the thing that woke them up, and that's the thing though that people have been talking about this whole postseason is the way that the Astros are able to bounce back. I mean, they were undefeated going into into the World Series, but they have that mindset of just moving on to the next thing. After these 2 losses against the Phillies, that they're not really worried because they've been there, done that. So it's that elite mindset of being able to move on, and they've been able to do that. And obviously, as we move on down to Game 5, they were able to again move on and just take care of business, and they did that with Justin Verlander on the mound. Had a shaky start. Both teams scoring in the first inning. And of course, Schwarber hitting a bomb off of Verlander in the first, but Verlander was able to settle in and get his first career World Series win. So we'll start with you, Gabe. What did you think about last night's performance? And you mentioned a lot of the defensive plays from this game already with the whole Chaz play in the 9th inning, leaping grab. And then also, Trey Mancini saving a couple of runs. But what did you think about this game? And then also just Justin Verlander, who's had a tough go in the World Series in his career. I believe he had a 6 over, entering that game. He had a ERA over 6. He was like 0-6, something like that. So, yeah, what did you think?
They just show why they are truly the best team in the American League and why all year long they've been the best team in baseball, in my opinion. Justin Verlander didn't have his A+ stuff, but yet he still found a way to get out of jams when they needed him to. Most pitchers, if that's a young pitcher who gives up that home run to Kyle Schwarber off of just the second pitch in the ball game, you kind of have a reason to fret. But this is when I give Dusty Baker credit.
Mm-hmm.
A guy who typically has been known to leave starters in for long periods of time, trusting his guy and letting him work through his mistakes, letting him find a way to get in and out of those jams because it paid off for him. And I think his management of Verlander combined with his management of Montero, putting in Ryan Presley in the bottom of that 8th to get the last 5 outs of the game, job well done. I think Dusty managed his best game in Game 5. And I believe that Verlander's ability to get out of jams and Pena's big-time hits combined with that insurance run that they were able to get in at the top of the 8th proved to be the difference in the game. In Philadelphia, failing to bring in runs that they had in scoring position. That was the difference to me.
Yeah, I mean, Verlander's kind of settled in after that, and he was just dotting and locating. As a manager, there's not much more that you can ask for out of your pitcher than to locate well and just dot and keep the ball out of the air as much as possible. And he showed why he's been in the MLB for so long to just kind of neutralize that Phillies offense for the most part going forward. And it just says a lot about his maturity. And I'm super happy for him. He finally got that first World Series win, and you can see there's something that meant a lot to him. He's not trying to lose in the World Series. You know what I mean? He's not trying to get shelled in the postseason. Neither is pitchers like Clayton Kershaw, who we know has had a phenomenal career, but has also struggled in the postseason. So when I see things like that, that makes me very happy. And it's just, timely hitting here and there. And that's one of those games where it just came down to, hey, you know what? Who's going to get the better timely hits? When are we going to get the outs we needed to? And, that's what game 5 really came down to. And it's going to be interesting going into game 6. Now we're going back to Houston. The Astros are kind of playing with a little bit more momentum as they they've pretty much neutralized a lot of Philly's energy going the last few games. Now going into Houston, is definitely going to be a climb, but I have more than enough faith in both teams to make some sort of incredible game out of this next game coming up. And it's interesting. It's very interesting, but this is a very important win for the Astros going forward. Very important.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also just the fact that, you kind of get a little bit of redemption on multiple ends. You guys have mentioned, with this Dusty Baker, Verlander. And that's another thing too, is that, they always had, you made a good point, Miles, in the sense of like, these guys aren't trying to lose. They always ask them, they're like, man, what do you think about this and that? And like, you haven't won the World Series, and it's like, you're not trying to lose. It's like, I'm out here trying to win. So, yeah, good for him good for him in getting his first win. And, it's going to be definitely a dogfight, and just to preview the last 2 games, we'll do that before we go. Obviously, game 6 and 7 this weekend. Game 6 is already set with the pitching matchup. It's Zach Wheeler versus Framber Valdez. But for you guys, we'll do one thing that needs to happen in these last 2 games. We'll start with you, Gabe. One thing that needs to happen for the team, for example, one thing for each team for them to win the World Series. What do you think the Phillies got to do, and what do you think the Astros got to do to win the World Series? We'll start with you, Gabe.
For the Phillies, I feel like pouncing early and drawing first blood is important. Being a road team against a pitcher like Valdez, you want to find a way to get to him early. Don't let him get settled in. Be aggressive at the plate. Hunt for the pitches that you find and that you're seeking to do damage with, and find a way to do it and drive in runs, because you can't find a way to get back in this series and win the World Series if you don't drive in runners when you have them in scoring position, which they didn't do in game 5. I think that's what they have to do. But the Astros, just, continue to get the most out of your pitching department and find a way to continue getting timely hits like they have been doing. Jeremy Pena has been incredible, but hopefully you would hope that, a guy like Jose Altuve can be that spark plug, get going. Because if he can have a good game 6, you never know what that might do to ignite the rest of the group over there in Houston in that dugout as they seek to capitalize on this opportunity and deliver Dusty Baker his first World Series championship.
Yeah, I agree with everything. I think with the Phillies, don't let these pitchers get settled in. We've seen the deeper that these pitchers go into the game, the more difficult it becomes to hit. And even if they're able to get a guy like Valdez out of the game by the 5th or 6th inning, you still have a very difficult bullpen you have to go through. Set the tone early, score the runs early while you can, and build off of that momentum. Because it kind of plays back and forth to the Astros. For the Astros, I'm saying keep pitching the way you've been pitching those last 2 games, and really the majority of how you've been pitching this entire postseason is some of the best pitching I've seen in my entire life. So I think just keeping that same approach in terms of dominating on the mound, keeping hitters off balance, getting the double play ball when you need to, striking guys out when you have to, neutralizing that Phillies offense as much as you can, on top of the timely hitting that this team seems to always have in every single game. Build off of that, and I think that's what's going to win the Astros a World Series. And yeah, with the Phillies, is just jump on those opportunities as early as you can, because the Phillies are a very big momentum team. When they score early and they feel good about themselves, they become very dangerous. If they're not getting the offense that they want to in the beginning, then they're kind of like, oh snap, okay. Now they kind of go into scramble mode offensively, and they don't have to do that. But that seems to be their mentality. So I would say, for this game coming up, score early, score often, give Wheeler the support that he needs to on the mound. You know what I mean? So it just comes down to, hey, who's gonna make the first move, who's gonna strike first, and build off of that momentum.
Yeah, of course. And I think too is, for me, it's going to be the bullpens for each team. I think, the Astros have been lights out for their bullpen has been it's just been disrespectful, like to each team has just been crazy. Uh, and the Phillies, it hasn't been, it hasn't been bad or anything. It's been good, but I'm saying like I think they have to be they're gonna if they want to win the series, they're gonna have to shore up a little bit more and kind of they're gonna have to be elite to beat the Phillies. I think it's it's obviously easier said than done, but I think that's what's gonna have to happen. They're gonna have to be better, and because well, and also what I'll say is that having Suarez in there, having probably Syndergaard in there, and having more arms in there now available with these last two games, that's going to help them out a lot. So I think that's going to be probably going to make the difference. But yeah, man, that'll do it just about for episode 31 for the At Bat Baseball podcast. The Astros up 3-2 in the series, but plenty of baseball left, and we'll cover it next week for sure, when it's all said and done and wrapped up. So I am Saul Rodriguez along with Gabe Wilkins and Miles Porter. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. Enjoy.